Welcome back. I'm still sick, so I'm not even going to go on camera today. I'm just going to get right to it. It's the fun stuff anyway. Nobody needs to see my face. So we've got our cookies. They're beautiful. They held their shapes just as they're supposed to. Good recipe. And they're delicious, which is even more important than anything. So I wanted to show you some of the tools that we need for this next process. So we need a tiny pair of scissors. The bright white helps to make sure that your other colors don't bleed. We've got Chef Master. That is my choice of, and these are gel. These are not liquids, these are gel. I don't use those liquids like from the supermarket. They're very weak and they change the texture of the icing because they're so watery. We've got some luster dust here. These are metallics and they're beautiful. You take a little bit and you mix it with vodka and you can paint with it. We've got some colored sanding sugars, which are also a nice way to add metallic color. Okay, these are little bands that we use to hold our piping bags closed because we don't want our icings slipping out the top. That is unpleasant. These are little clips that do the same thing, but I use them when I've got a much smaller bag, when I'm using just a little tiny detail. These are scribes, and they are used to move icing around on the cookie or using them to pull. You'll see we're going to be doing one of those in a wet on wet, and you'll see that very shortly. This is a non-skid mat that's just for cookies, and this is a little Lazy Susan, so that when we need to move our cookie, we don't have to move our body. We can just spin this. It makes it much easier. Here we've got a paintbrush. This is just for food. This has never been used for anything else other than icing. Okay, we've got our meringue powder, and this is going to be used to make our royal icing. We've got our powdered sugar, again, for our royal icing. The recipe will be posted, don't worry about it. And of course, we need to have just a bit of corn syrup. You don't have to use corn syrup in royal icing, but I find it gives a nicer sheen and it makes the icing less hard. So it gives it a nicer bite. Okay, here we have our tipless piping bags. That means that these do not require adding a tip at all. What we will do is just fill them. I'll show you exactly how to cut them, and we seal them, and these are great for using for cookie decorating. Now I set up a place for them to dry, my cookies to dry. So what I do, let's cover my cookies back up here. What I do is I put down a rack, a parchment paper, and another rack. I do this because if there's any dripping, which hopefully there should not be, but sometimes not everything goes the way you want. And so I have it set up this way to avoid a mess. So this is our setup, and I'm just gonna go grab the overhead so you could see directly over my head, and we're gonna decorate some cookies. One more thing I wanted to share. Before you when you start decorating your cookies, it's best, in my opinion, to plan out the designs that you're going to use. That way you're not trying to figure it out while you've got icings that you're trying to make sure don't dry. You don't wanna make not enough of one color, too much of another. So you plan it out. So that's exactly what I've done here. That's powdered sugar. And here we have meringue powder. Now you can do this with fresh egg whites, but it's just a pain in the butt, to be perfectly honest with you. You want meringue powder, I promise you. Now I like to mix this up before we go into any of our wet ingredients. That's our corn syrup. We need every bit of it. Don't pour it all in. Hold some back, add it a little at a time. You can add it if you can't take it out. And here we have our royal icings, white, red, green, and blue. Now the red requires a little extra care. Red is hard to get, so you have to use something called super red. And even when you're using super red, it takes more than you'd think. The way I get it a little deeper, because I don't really like a bright screaming red, I just don't enjoy it. I like a more of a vintage red, is I take a toothpick with black, and I literally take just a little bit at the tip of a toothpick of the black, and I mix it in with the red. And it dials down to a more vintage red, which is my preference. If you like that bright Christmassy red, then super red is for you. This batch here, these are for my details and my dams. This is going to be what holds the flood in and helps us do our little detail work. And I will show you our flood. Hold on just a moment. Here, obviously much bigger. These are our flood icings. And they're ready to go. Now notice I have them all seam side up. I'm going to explain that to you when it's time to cut the tips of our bags. When you're cutting your bags to start to work, you absolutely have to cut your tips of your bags with the seam of the bag facing the ceiling. Very, very important, okay? We're almost ready to sit down and start work. And this is our final setup. We've got our outline, our flood, our sanding sugars, our mat with our little spinner on it, our scribes, a pair of scissors, and a very, very tiny little paintbrush that's only ever used for food. Okay? We've got under our towel, we've got our cookies all set to go. We've got our plan cards ready. Now, here's what we're going to do. I just mixed up all these colors. I find that you get a much nicer color when you let them rest for 30 minutes. If you can let them rest for longer, so much the better. They just deepen a little bit and you get a more true color to what you'll end up with. Okay, so I'm going to let these rest for 30 minutes and then we start.